Hi, Tony from All the Remote Things, and I'm here today with Lorenz Sell. How are you today?
Great. It's great to be with you.
Fantastic. It's great to have you on All the Remote Things. And as I usually do, I'd like to introduce you, but in the spirit of it, I'll let you introduce yourself, the author's version. So we had a bit of a laugh out of that previously because you're thinking, okay, well, give my life story or whatever, but you'd like to give everybody a bit of a taste of who you are and where you've come from.
Oh boy, this is definitely my least favorite part, but I'll do my best.
All business.
I've been a startup guy for my whole life. I started my first company shortly out of college. Actually, interesting little backstory. Working with the guy who he didn't start it, but who owns Tetris, the video game. He basically brought it to the world. And so this was back in 2005. He ended up investing like over $5 million in the company that we started together, building a photo management product, which basically we use like facial recognition and facial detection to automatically organize people's photos. So that's where I started out as an entrepreneur and kind of made every mistake in the book and thought I learned everything there was to learn, but continued to make a lot of other mistakes throughout my entrepreneurial career. Um, and so that was my first startup. Then I did another startup around health and fitness called Heartbeat. And somewhere along the way, became really interested in peace. I had a I guess what you call a life-changing experience in 2011, and it really kind of opened up my awareness around the possibility of peace, the question of peace. What does it mean to be in service of peace? And so I started really thinking about how to use my tech background um, to create deeper levels of connection and awareness online, and really became fascinated with community. How do you connect people within communities to support the sharing of knowledge and resources? Um, and that work kind of, I did a lot of different grassroots experiments, just basically trying to find a version of that felt real and authentic. And I spent about 4 or 5 years between 2011 2015, really stumbling around, not quite finding anything that landed. And then around 2015, participated in a program from the Presencing Institute. If you're familiar, it's an organization loosely based out of MIT. Professor Otto Scharmer is one of the founders. They have a program, one of their flagship programs is called ULab. And so they have about 30,000 people in the program, and they broke us up into groups of 5 people. And I think and it was across 10 weeks, and we met once a week. And it was one of the first times, this was in 2015, one of the first times where I met a group of strangers online and felt a very deep level of connection with them. And so I was like, wow, there's something here. So I went to my wife and I was like, I really want to like do something here, and something around like working with small groups in the context of larger community. And so I wrote the first line of code in 2015, and that is what has now become Sutra, and really exploring this thread around that the way that people feel connected is through small groups. And then the second layer, which kind of emerged for us a little later, was that learning in particular can be a catalyst for that. The people need a reason to engage with something. I know you do a lot of work with Agile, with organizations, and so the reason there is quite implicit already. Usually, like that's the part of their job, and they need to be productive. When we originally started, we weren't really looking in the context of an organization. It was more in the context of a community, which can be kind of have a much looser reason. And so what we found is that when there's something that people want to learn, when there's a learning experience that is meaningful for people, then that can function as a catalyst to really enroll people to invest the time into an experience. And then the way that you bring people in that experience can create that connection and that deeper level of awareness. So yeah, that was kind of like a long response to you for my bio, but just the landitude. So this is all that kind of journey has really brought me to the work that I do today, which is really looking at how do you foster, facilitate, cultivate deeper levels of awareness and connection within a given system. That system might be a group of 5 people learning together, might be a community, might be an organization, but that's really the heart of the work that we're doing today.
That was a brilliant intro, by the way. So just because it's a great linking, because you did mention Sutra, right? So and I think that's the next link here is that I was introduced to this via a mutual friend, or shout out to our friend Kirsten Clacy, who's been on the show. And she said, you really need to see this stuff. So that's why I went out of my way to come and find you. And so Sutra, talk to us about it, because I've heard the themes that you're talking about there around, peace and learning and connections and collaboration. And I've done a little bit of research, and it seems to me what you've tried to do is tie all that together with a systematic platform. So it would be nice for the viewers to hear exactly what it means and how it's working.
Sure. Yeah. There are a few threads here. I mean, one is we always say Sutra by itself doesn't magically create meaningful connection. So I think it's really important to understand a sutra on a couple of levels. And one level is just on a pure functional level, and the other level is in terms of the ecosystem of users and kind of applications and intentions around that usage. So on a purely functional level, Sutra might be what you get as a product if you combine something like Slack with something like Notion. It basically makes it really easy for you to organize all your content, all your conversations, all your groups in one place. It's particularly designed around kind of cohort-based training programs, although you can also run self-paced training programs on it, where you want to be able to, you might have a series of Zoom calls and you want a place to post your recordings. You want to be able to send out, say, an email newsletter once a week with some announcements. You might want to have different topic-specific discussion groups, or if you have a larger cohort, say 50 people, maybe you want to have like 5 groups of 10 people, or 10 groups of 5 people, and you want to be able to manage all that in one place. So you want to be able to, say, process registrations, collect money for your program. So Sutra does all of that. It's designed to basically kind of be an all-in-one solution for a group learning experience. On the other side of that, which has been really took us a long time to really understand as well, because as I mentioned, this kind of long journey that we were on around looking at, how do you create meaningful connection online? And maybe I'll draw a distinction here, because I think it's really important to understand. There's a difference between activity and intimacy. Right?
Yeah.
So activity, you have a Facebook group, people are posting messages, but there may be like zero intimacy. Do people really know each other? Do they care about each other? Is there anything more than like a username, there between people? So that's activity, and sometimes that's all that people want, and that's fine. But intimacy is very different. Intimacy is I know who you are, I care about you. We can have a conversation. I feel heard. I hear you. So that's a much deeper layer of interaction. And it took us a while to really understand that, software as just purely like a piece of software will only take you so far. That the other side of that is the process, is the way that you bring people into an experience, is the way that you structure it, the way that you architect it to elicit that level of connection, that level of intimacy and awareness. And so on Sutra, there's, we continually offer different content, different training programs. We have, like, say, office hours. We kind of attract a particular audience across a broad spectrum. For example, right now we're doing some consulting work with the WHO around, kind of fostering deeper levels of communication and connection within one of their departments. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have all sorts of coaches and consultants and healers and people like that who are offering their training programs and things like that. So there's an ecosystem in Sutra around creating these kinds of experiences, built on top of a platform that is just designed to support those experiences on a purely functional level.
That's a really interesting thought around how you've pulled you heard me talk about it when pre this, right? We talked about the physicality and the digitality, right? We moved into that living in the digital and working in the digital environment. And there's a lot of things that don't work in the physicality, but what you're talking about is that intimacy piece that you're bringing in, that that we would normally associate with the physical environment, but you're actually bringing that into the virtual environment. And I think, that's something I've been looking to quite a bit, because obviously with remote agility framework, that's our species as well, is to make the remote working a better thing for everyone. I'm really interested in that. How's it being received?
It's been, I'd say for the people, this is an interesting thing about as far as getting the word out about something. What we find is that it's difficult to describe the work that we do. But when people actually come and so we sometimes we go through cycles where we offer a lot of free workshops just to kind of what we find is that when people come to a workshop, that if they have an interest in what we're doing, they're immediately kind of hooked, because there's a direct experience that's available, when you're in a space that's being run this way, and that's a big part of what we teach how to do is how do you create that direct experience, because you can talk about connection, you can talk about deep listening, you can talk about presence, but they're very conceptual until a person has this experience of really being in that kind of interaction, in that kind of space, and particularly online. So as far as how it's being received, I'd say for the hardest part is kind of maybe finding people who are have an appreciation or a resonance with that kind of thing. But we find that once people encounter our work, that it's received really, really well, and also just finding that, particularly right now, with everything going on in the world. I mean, since COVID started, we have, Black Lives Matter, we have the war in Ukraine, we have COVID, we have, climate change. You have just, I could go on probably for half an hour listing all the things that have created kind of a massive, tension in different ways on the planet. And so I think there's been a big shift in an underlying need for people to feel heard, to feel connected, to become present to the many things that are kind of tugging at their awareness and their emotional capacity. So, so I'm finding that there's a growing interest in this kind of thing.
And I think it's only going to keep growing. You think about it. COVID was a bit of the lightning rod that created the momentum to move into working remote / hybrid, that type of thing, right? But as you said, 2015, people were already doing it, and there are lots of instances. I was working in it, and I'm not the only one. But it seems to me now that with that lightning rod moment that's taken the cork off and the genie's out of the bottle, a lot of people are looking at this remote thing thinking, well, we don't really want to go back. And what's happening is organizations are looking and going, okay, now how do we create these connections? And to me, what you're talking about there is some of the things that organizations are yearning for. Do you have a lot of leaders who are involved? Because to me, it sounds like that, leadership is one of the things that has really been hit hard, regardless of what type of leader, what type of industry, what type of organization. When you move into the remote frame, it changes the whole way they need to lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that also speaks to kind of maybe something that's shifting in the way that we work. You probably know more about this than I do, but in the sense of, I feel like there's a call for a deeper integration between people's professional and personal lives. This idea that people don't just show up to work and block out their entire personal life and everything that's going on in the world. They show up and everything is still there. And so when we have a workspace that doesn't have any room for that, we have a workspace that doesn't quite invite, a person's full humanity. And so we do have a number. It's interesting with our flagship program, Transformational Teaching Online. So that's like a 7-week mentorship program that we launched a couple of years ago. And we have a number. We have all sorts of people that participate, and I think that's what makes the program kind of what it is, because it's very participatory. A lot of the experience comes from the participation of the people and what they contribute. And some of the people are, entirely new to facilitation and holding space. And some people have been doing it for 20, 30 years. And some people are leaders from different organizations. For example, the way that we ended up working with the WHO is that one, a department head ended up participating in our course kind of randomly. And she was so kind of I don't know, I'm impressed by it or whatever. She had an experience that was meaningful, that then she is now bringing into her department, and so we're being involved there. So I it's been a really interesting for me to kind of explore how we've gone from just looking at communities to kind of recognizing that the underlying capacity of connection and awareness is really relevant in any context.
So can I pick you up a little bit on the programs that you run? Because you mentioned one there. What's the sort of suite, or what are the programs that you run, just so that people can sort of understand that as well?
Right now, we mostly just run this one program, so Transformational Teaching Online. What we realized, and it's very much related to the journey that we went on. What we started in 2015, and I wrote the first line of code. 3 months later, we were already testing the platform in different co-working spaces and just different communities. We also, my wife and I have been going to Burning Man for a long time, and we were running our Burning Man camp with it.
Oh, that's on the bucket list, by the way.
Yeah, me too at the moment. So, and then we kind of got, we started working with the Harvard program in refugee trauma to deliver there. They had basically kind of a cohort-based training, small group-oriented training program. And what we realized at some point, 2019-ish or so, was that we kind of understood and learned so much about the underlying mechanics of running this kind of group-oriented learning experience where there's an emphasis on the connection and the conversation. But that we were kind of taking it for granted that everybody else knew how to do this, and that people knew how to use our software to really take advantage of what it offered in that context. And we had this moment where we realized that actually most people didn't have this obsessive passion with it like we did. And so we should, maybe we should offer a course around that. And so that we offer, it was actually just before COVID started. The whole thing hit halfway through our first cohort.
Wow.
So we launched our first cohort in early 2020 would be, or is that when COVID? Yes, I think so, right? Early 2020 we launched.
Yes.
It's all a blur.
It's like a period, isn't it? It's just blurred into one.
So we launched our first cohort in early 2020. And now we're getting ready to launch our seventh one. And so it's really deepened as far as its relevancy and even the nature of the experience, because we've learned so much from it. I think a big part of running this kind of experience is that there isn't a formula for it. It's not like this is how you do it, boom, boom, boom. But rather there's an approach to creating a living experience that invites authenticity, that invites participation, that invites contribution, and that's what makes the experience feel alive. Is that when a person feels like they're contributing, and their contribution is meaningful and is making the experience what it is for everybody else. And that's the power of it. That's where people really wake up and feel alive and engaged. And of course, as soon as that becomes formulaic, it loses what it is. So a big part of our experience with the TTO has been going through that process each time. It's a little bit scary too, because each time it's like, okay, we have 50 to 100 people and we don't know what's going to happen. But it's really, we have all these people from all different backgrounds and levels of experience kind of contributing to creating this space that really comes alive in its own way. And then what we do in that experience is basically kind of deconstruct what's happening. So there's kind of like a meta experience of being in the experience, and then observing the experience, and kind of like deconstructing the underlying mechanics of what creates it and makes it what it is, in a way that a person can then take it and bring it into their own work, whether they're offering a course or a community or working in an organization.
Well, that's fantastic. And I do mean, sort of just pumping the tires up there. I really, really love what you're about and how this is working. And I talking to you previously, you've got something new coming. I think it's in April sometime. So I think it'd be good to just sort of let everyone know where that's coming from as well.
Yeah, so that's actually the next cohort of this course, Transformational Teaching Online. So the website it's got its own little website, transformationalteaching.com. We're launching, will be our 7th cohort. And the course is, it's come a long way. We've previously, we've always run it in cohort. We're actually going to offer a self-paced version as well, where we'll be sharing a lot of the kind of underlying activities that people can use to, there's kind of there's like, there's a toolbox of things that you can use, and then there's kind of like, creating the space and holding the space. And I feel like that's something that, you really benefit from, the direct experience of being in a live cohort. But then the toolbox can help you, kind of just give you a reference of stuff to work with, and give you, kind of some of the approaches that we've learned over the last 5 years of doing this stuff pretty intensely. So we're launching the evergreen version and cohort version April 28th. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and I can see why. So my hard question for you is, where you headed? What's the next horizon? Because I know you're thinking that far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
What's that of species that you're looking to take it to that next level?
This whole thing's been such a journey, because we really, we really crystallized this question on our work, which is, how do you cultivate deeper levels of connection and awareness within a given system, right? So whether the system is 5 people or 50 people or 1,000 people, and for me, this question is really alive and really pressing in terms of everything going on in the world. That every organization, every community can benefit from this quality of awareness, of authentic, meaningful connection, of people that are really present with each other. And how do you create that, right? It's not, and it's not like there's like a singular answer for that. In a lot of ways, the question is the answer, and every group of people has to have a desire and find their own path to answering that question. For us, we're looking at how do you really support that question. How do you build software that really facilitates a relational experience between people, where there's an emphasis on the quality of conversation? How do you take, there's so much online discussion that happens, but then nothing happens with it. How do you somehow harvest understanding from that? And how do you somehow help people kind of crystallize what's emerging between a group of people? So for us, it's kind of like a very unwieldy and abstract question. And I think that's what makes it so exciting in a way. And a lot of what we're continually sensing into and prototyping into is, you look at something like Slack, for example, and Slack is obviously a great, very kind of like basic utility product. But how do you go beyond that? How do you go beyond just text-based discussion to actually somehow harvesting what's emerging out of a discussion between a group of people, to kind of generate some sort of deeper insight? And I don't have an answer for that, but that's something we've been really looking at for, there's many kind of approaches, maybe between AI or kind of like highlighting different things that come out. And so we're looking at all of that, but that's really what we're interested in creating, is a tool that kind of blurs the territory between collaboration and learning. Like, I think a good learning experience is always collaborative. A good collaboration is always, embedded with learning. And for us, we're really interested in building a tool that bridges those territories, to kind of give people more insight into the kind of the relational aspect of their experience together.
Look, I'm excited to see where this goes, and like I said, we'll be keeping in touch, because I can see where you're starting to blur that line, and I truly think that's the next step in this remote hybrid / whatever you want to call it journey. It's been brilliant to have you on. Look, we're pretty close to the end of our time, so how can people get involved? How can they get in touch with you? How can they be part of the Sutra experience?
Sure. So, we have our platform, Sutra.co. There's a free version that people can use. As I mentioned, we're kind of, we're constantly iterating and prototyping. And so we welcome feedback. We run weekly office hours. Anybody can show up. If you need support setting something up, I'd say one of our shining points is just how committed we are to the success of anybody on our platform. And, we have incredible customer service, and so we really care about everyone's experience, and we're constantly collecting feedback and kind of iterating on top of that. So if someone is interested in this territory, I invite you to take Sutra for a ride. I invite you to shoot me an email. My email is lorenz@sutra.co, or just get in touch in any way.
Well, that's been fantastic to have you on. Thank you for spending the time with us. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to see where that journey goes, Lorenz.
Yeah, great to be with you, man. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And if you're listening to this, don't forget, like, subscribe, amplify, all the remote things for all things remote. Have a good evening.